Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing, Bob?
Your audio's not on. You're muted.
No, I'm not. Can you hear me now? Bob, can you hear me? Bob? Bob, can you hear me? No? You can't hear me?
It's deaf today. Good morning.
Hey, Armando, can you hear me?
I can.
You can't.
Hello, yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Maybe it's me.
Oh,
Huh?
hi, Bob.
Me.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that, you know,
We can hear you perfectly clear.
good. Okay. It would make it somewhat difficult to do this if you couldn't. I'd have to sign.
Yeah. We'd have to learn how to read it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck on that, right?
Right.
Wow. All right. Anyway, happy Wednesday. Everybody enjoy the big storm last night?
I did a start.
But nothing happened over here.
Think I slept through
It
it.
drops. And it's still crowded, and it looked like I have been, dropping a few drops, still wet outside. So,
Yeah. Yeah, about 4:00 this morning, I got woken up to a big thud right above my head. I have this huge tree, that's literally like 4 feet, 5 feet off the house. And the thing's got to be about 120 feet tall. It's a big like tulip poplar.
Oh.
And it dropped a couple of really good sized pieces last night right on the roof.
Good morning. I have a question or a statement. I have a statement. I never talk, but I want to say something about cultural appropriation.
Yes.
Okay? I'm going to tell you something. My parents came from Belarus. You want to hear how my mother cooked? My mother cooked. She had bagels. She had borscht from Russia, kugel that the Jews got from Germany. She made southern fried chicken. And then you may not know what this is, halavar from Turkey. So the Jews lived all over the world. They were always running from people who were scapegoating them. They came to America, and that's how they are. So cultural appropriation is fabulous. Look at all the wonderful food, the Chinese food, the Italian food. Impressionists all copied each other. The artists copy each other. It's a compliment. If the food was crap, do you think my mother would have copied it? And religions copy each other too. So cultural appropriation is development, and it's one world. And look at us. We are all mixed. Is that cultural appropriation? What we look like?
Are we looking at a black screen? Is that's what's on screen now, the black screen?
Well, that's Naomi.
Oh, I see you.
So do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
You see my point of view? That it's a rich world. America is so mixed and wonderful. In New York City, you can have all sorts of stuff, all sorts of people, all sorts of foods. And when you look at art, all the artists copy each other. So I don't understand this negative cultural appropriation. What, you own it and people can't compliment you and copy it? Everything you see, you get ideas and you change. Everything is evolving. And I'm telling you, my example, Go to the store, get halava. It comes from Turkey. So you say we shouldn't have it? I don't understand the meaning is. What does it mean?
Okay, well, let me, okay, my turn. First of all, thank you for doing my whole lesson today, because that's what you just did.
I know you told me that. You had said that you were going to do that.
Yeah. But, you know, and your point is exactly the point I'm making to all of you, is that there are groups of people out there who yell and scream about cultural appropriation, but the fact is the world as we know it today, because of communication and because people are so transient and we move around, and, you know, we have many people from Africa living in this country. We have many people from the Middle East living in this country and all over. And what happens in any culture that they go to, those cultures adopt a lot of their traditional things like food, you know, influences on art, architecture, you know, culture, things like that. And that's not just happening in the United States. You know, back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, you know, we basically, you know, the whole idea is that America is a melting pot, right? You know, people come from everywhere and they make their contributions to society. You know, my life personally would be a lot less rich if I couldn't go down and get a gyro, you know, because I love the things, you know.
Right.
You know, and the same thing about going to a Japanese restaurant and, you know, ordering udon. You know, I mean, you know, these are things that I eat all the time, and they come from different cultures. And that's the wonderful thing about living in a modern culture, is that we have access to, you know, we don't have access to that culture, but we do have little bits of it, you know, that we incorporated, you know, into our own culture, and those things have become kind of commonplace. But, you know, the same thing with fashion and dress, and, you know, there's influences from everywhere, and that's okay.
What about fashion?
What's about, oh, fashion?
Fashion, oh, you copy fashion too?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you look at a lot of the dresses and things that are popular in New York, well, at least a couple of years ago, a lot of those outfits that women were walking up and down, you know, the runway on, you know, a lot of them were modeled off of, like, Indian, you know, from India, not, you know, dot, not feather, and, you know, Middle Eastern dress. You know, a lot of the patterns, a lot of the fabrics, things like that, you know, were picked up, you know, from those cultures, and then, you know, modernized, westernized.
It's called variety. It's called variety. Diversification.
Yeah. But, you know, that's the world that we live in. Is
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like the dresses from the Indians. I think they are beautiful.
yeah, the saris and stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You look at the fabrics and things there. Yeah. I mean, and the food, you know, we even take other cultures and sort of incorporate them in, you know, into our language. And, you know, that's how culture works. You know, culture is not,
Evolving.
yeah, it's not supposed to be a dead thing that is, you know, set in like cement. You know, I mean, for a long time, over many centuries, you know, because people didn't, you know, travel a lot, and, you know, they didn't have a lot of people coming to their communities or countries or things like that. You know, they did stay the same. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's also,
Boring.
you know, but it's also nothing wrong with people from other cultures coming into the community, and then the community sort of adopting some of what they have as well. So it's, you know, this is the world we live in. So.
And Naomi, I remember a lot from when we were at the Benson Center, all the great fabric things you had done on tote bags and things like that. Your patterns and colors were like outstanding and influenced by everywhere, I think.
Well, I like abstract and, you know, I like colorful abstract, but I do imitate whatever I see and I like. So this cultural appropriation, I don't understand. I don't understand the negative, and I don't like that word appropriation. People copy from each other forever. And so that in the Middle Ages, they didn't do anything. Okay? Now we're out of that. Look at when you don't, you're not exposed and you don't take the best from other cultures. I just think I don't understand what they're trying to say. That it's negative, that we're stealing. We're not stealing. We're being influenced and it's a compliment.
Yeah. Well, Naomi, there are positive sides to cultural appropriation, which we were talking about.
What? Mention.
Yeah, there are also negative sides.
Yeah, the negative. I want to know the negative.
Okay, and the negative is that, you know, if you go to institutions like the Smithsonian Institute, okay, in this country, you know, they have opened up just recently, like the last maybe 10 years, you know, a whole museum dedicated, you know, to Native American culture, right?
Oh, yes, yes. I think Native American culture is fascinating, but I have a pocketbook that looks like Native American with the fringes. So I'm cultural appropriation because I like the beading and I like all of that. But I'm not saying do away with it and give them credit, but I'm saying we could copy this and use it. So
finish saying what I was going to say.
I don't understand what the problem is.
I'm trying to explain it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's the problem. You know, they open up a museum. It's full of artifacts. These artifacts were, many of them were illicitly
Stolen.
Well, not, you know, I mean, they were dug up out of Mississippian mounds, you know, that are thousands and thousands of years old. You know, they were taken from, you know, Native American tribes on the plains, things like that. And nobody paid those people, and nobody's, you know, collected them, you know, by being given those things. They were just taken. You know, when they cleared the people off the land, you know, they collected a lot of the artifacts. And in that case, that's the negative part of cultural appropriation.
Well, the positive is that they collected it and preserved it. How about wars? Wasn't it recently in the last 20 years that they bombed, the Muslims bombed Hindu statues? Remember that? Thousands of years old. That wasn't cultural appropriation. That was, they just got rid of it. Better to save it and copy it. That's the positive. Think of that.
Well, yeah, there are positives and negatives to that. You know, you could argue that having those things in a museum is maybe a good thing because then a wider range of people could see it. But at the same time, you also have to acknowledge how those things were acquired. You know, and, you know, in the future, you know, people need to be more sensitive, you know, about how they go about, you know, collecting artifacts and things like that for museums. And you have to respect the cultures that they came from. And that's what was lacking definitely during the 18th, 19th. And
no, that has gone on forever. Forever. It has been not respected people's culture.
Okay, but
this is nothing new.
Okay.
But I'm saying now we are enjoying it and we're influenced by it and complimenting it. We're not saying it's bad. In fact, the pottery that I love is from Native Americans.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's cultural appropriation.
Well, the thing is, Naomi, just because we might enjoy those things and seeing them in the museum.
No, I'm saying if I make a pot and I use a Native American design, which I love, that's cultural appropriation. What should I do then?
Well, some people see it that way. Okay. And this again gets back into this long discussion about, where are the boundaries and why should there be any limitation put on anybody? If
Right.
they see something and they like it, regardless of the culture that it came from, okay, like for example, I might see a Benin mask from Africa, one of the bronze masks,
Right.
and like the designs and things in it, and then I might take that, like Pablo Picasso did, and incorporate it into my paintings, right?
What's wrong with that?
Well, and see, here's the thing, that's the argument. There are people who have problems with that, right? And want to kind of point a finger at, people and going, well, you're appropriating my culture. And then there are other people, with a broader view of it, which is, yeah, okay, so we're using things from your culture. We acknowledge that. Nobody's trying to say that we're not, taking from it, but then we're adapting it to our own uses. And so it becomes part of my culture, when I do that. And, I guess that's my premise and that's my argument here with people, is that, as you were saying, cultural appropriation has happened literally, since the
Forever.
of man, right? And I do see that, or I do feel like there is some validity in the fact of, if you're going to, basically collect artifacts, for display in museums and things like that, you have to give some restitution to the cultures that they came from, and acknowledge, how they were gotten. And, that's where people get in a row about it is, you had, like, for example, we're talking about Africa in particular here. You had a long period of time where all of these cultures were basically colonized, and westernized. And during that period of time, a lot of Europeans walked off with a lot of these pieces of artwork, or we view them as art. They viewed them as day-to-day artifacts that they used, that were part of their culture. And so there's some hostility there, in the fact that for an African, somebody from Mali or somebody from, say, the Congo or something like that, if they want to see some of their ancient art, some of the roots of where their culture came from and their experience that they're having today, they have to go to London to go to that museum to see those Benin masks. So,
Well, it was stolen then. Was it stolen, or did they give permission for
No.
those archaeologists to dig? Yeah,
No.
how did they get it? Did they steal it? Stealing is stealing. Give it back. Just like in the British Museum, they have things from Roman times that
Right.
they are giving back. But that I agree with. That, but how did they get it? But I'm saying to copy and use culture from all over the world makes our life rich. It's wonderful. That's what I enjoy. That's what I liked about New York. People, all these different people. Isn't it boring? It's like white bread. Do you like white bread, or do you like rye bread and different? That's what I'm saying. That we are experiencing in America the cultures from all the immigrants that come here. That's what I'm saying.
And nobody's disagreeing with you about
Yeah,
that.
so that's I just wanted to make that point that I enjoy diversity, and to say cultural appropriation, if you're stealing their artifacts, that's stealing. But to say you're appropriating, okay, music. People copy American music all over the world. They love our music.
Sure.
They love our Western dress. They copy our Western dress. That's fine. I have no problem. I don't feel, I don't have an inferiority complex about it. I feel it's a compliment. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I have an African mask in my home. I bought it from a flea market or something. It's wooden, it's colorful, it has an animal on top of it. It's the most fabulous thing. I mean, so it's an African mask. I shouldn't have an African mask. See what I mean? An artist made it. I bought it at a flea market. It's fabulous. It wasn't stolen. Somebody in Africa made these masks, these wooden masks, and it's fabulous. So is that cultural appropriation?
No, not in itself. I mean, I mean, you've got a variety of influences of culture in your home, and that's fine. What they're talking about though is
Stealing their artifacts. That's what you're saying.
kind of illegal,
Okay.
illicitly taking, artifacts from a culture, and, because you're colonial power and you feel like you have the right to just come in and take whatever you want.
Well, they stole also gold and diamonds and everything. But the word is stealing. But as far as stealing their culture, we're enjoying their culture when we copy it.
Yeah, they put that all under appropriation because it's a nicer word than calling somebody a thief.
No, I like it. You know how I am. Stealing is stealing.
So anyway,
Can
let's.
I interject something here? Just have you watched the show called Curse of Oak Island, which is on the History Channel, and it is a couple of Americans are going for treasure. They have found a lot of evidence that there's probably treasure at Oak Island, which is in Nova Scotia.
Uh-huh.
Well, a part of their research or their diggings, they found some pottery from a tribe known as the Mi'kmaq tribe, which is a Native North American tribe that resided in Nova Scotia for many years, and they're still around. Anyway, in working their research, this stream runs both directions because they have found symbols in their culture that are taken from the Vikings, who came over long before the Christopher Columbus's discovery. I mean, they went, pretty much confident they were here. So what I'm saying is the stream runs in both directions. The culture of the Mi'kmaq probably went back with the Vikings, and the Vikings and the Mi'kmaq took culture from the Vikings area. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Not only that, they appropriated, the use of metal.
Right.
Yeah, because they basically have found. The Vikings supposedly, came over here in about the 9th to 11th century.
Right.
Yeah. And then, because of the interaction of those two groups, Native Americans and the Vikings, who were in the northern part of North America, they picked up metal objects from the Vikings, and then they started actually looking for and creating their own copper, instruments.
How about horses? The Spanish brought the horses, changed the Native American people's lives.
Yeah, well, that's the Spanish, and that's, when that was.
The Spanish did a lot of bad things, but the good news is they brought the horses to North America.
Yeah, well, they brought them back to North America.
Well, we know that. It was thousands of years.
Yeah, but yeah, they were extinct here for a long time. At any rate, let's get back on Africa, okay? I've got a couple of things to share with you guys. Let's see who's here. But, I mean, this whole discussion, about cultural appropriation, things like that, that's something that, I'm trying to make all of you aware of and get a better insight into, what that conversation is really all about. And I think it cuts both ways. There is some justification, for different people in different countries or different cultures, being somewhat upset at, how their culture has been appropriated and used. But at the same time, there are also, some positives that have come from that as well. And you need to recognize both.
But what do you mean used? I want to know, what do you mean used?
Well, okay.
I'm ready to go on to a lesson. Jeez.
I'm sorry, what? Bernice? Bernice?
Fajitas that we have now in America, that's,
No, I was just saying, I was waiting for the lesson to begin.
Yeah.
okay, forget it. All right.
Okay. So anyway, we're going to look at a couple of different artists today. And what we're looking at is African artists that are contemporary African artists. This is not, traditional African art as a lot of people think of it. But this is what's going on in Africa today. All right. So I've got 5 short videos, and then I've got some actual artwork to look at, and we'll talk about that as we move along. So I'm going to start with, where do I want to start? Yeah, let's start with this one. And if we can just see what is what. Yeah, okay, that's the one. That's where we want to go. All right, now this is a TED Talk. It's only 7 minutes, so it's not long.
Let's talk about how the narrative of Africa is being told and who is doing the telling. I want to share with you the selection of work by contemporary artists from Africa and its diaspora. I love this art. I find it beautiful and inspiring and thrilling, and I really hope I'm able to pique your interest. I want to share something about myself and why art matters to me. I'm the daughter of an artist, so that means that growing up, I had the chance to see my father do artwork in his studio. My home was surrounded by art, and I had an early art education being dragged to museum and exhibition over the summer holidays. What I did not understand really at the time is that it also gave me an early understanding about why art is important, how to look at it, how to understand it, but also how to love it. So art matters to me on a personal level, and not only because it's beautiful and inspiring and thrilling, but because art tells powerful stories. All these artists have stories to tell you about what it means to be African, stories that tell you and touches about our African identity, but also stories that tell us about who we are as African, but also stories that tell us about our complex history. So how can art tell you powerful stories? I want to share with you this series by Senegalese artist Omar Victor Diop. This is a series of self-portraits. And the artist in this particular series is focusing on the representation of African in art history between the 15th to the 19th century. I want to show you how with one image, Diop is able to touch on our African identity, on the politics of representation, but also on our social value system. In this particular self-portrait, Diop is actually referencing another portrait by Anne-Louise Giraudet. His picture is doing a portrait of Jean-Baptiste Bailly. Jean-Baptiste Bailly was a native of Senegal, a former slave of Haiti. But during his lifetime, he also was elected to represent the colony at the third government of the French Revolution. And he advocated strongly for the abolition of slavery. What is very smart and clever about Diop here is that he's going back to history. He's reclaiming this figure by restaging this beautiful, royal blue uniform where he's restaging also the pose. And he's doing that to actually underline issue that are still impacting individuals of color today. There was nothing special about this very typical political portrait of the time, except that for the first time, an individual of color, in that case, Jean-Baptiste Bailey, was actually named and acknowledged in a painting. What Diop is adding to this picture is this crucial element, which is the football under his arm. And by doing that, Diop is actually touching at our hero worship culture of African football stars, who unfortunately, despite their fame, their immense talent, and their royalty statues, they are still invisible. Diop is asking us to dig deeper, to go beyond history and what has been written, and basically see how it still influences and impacting us in the present. I want to share this other beautiful series called Kesh Angels by artist Hassan Hajjaj. So in this particular series, the artist is really pushing on the boundaries of stereotype and cliche. Hassan Hajjaj is a friend, and honestly, I admire him dearly, but this particular series is talking to me directly as a Muslim woman. I experience this all the time, where people have a lot of expectation, religious one and cultural ones. But what I love about this artist is that he's putting all this on its head. He's actually challenging every representation of Muslim Arabic women that there is. Hassan Hajjaj is a child of the diaspora. He grew up in Morocco amongst, bright logo goods, counterfeit, original being sold at the souks. So to see those symbols, representing in his work a celebration of the global culture or a critic of the global urban culture is no surprise. But really, at the heart of his work is his desire of a nuanced representation. He wants us to interrupt ourselves and all the perception that we might have on people, on a culture, and on an environment. And for example, this particular picture, your common association would be certain street brand for a certain Western distinctive consumer. Well, he mashes it all up, where he is daring to imagine a female biker culture where actually Chanel or Louis Vuitton is designing the djellaba and Nike the babouche, and this is actually their standard uniform. What I love about the women in Kesh Angels is that they're able to hold your gaze. We are completely participating in the image, but they are the one inviting us in, and in their own terms. Hassan Hajjaj, Kesh Angels, or Project Diaspora by Omar Victor Diop are for me two strong examples why art is so instrumental. It is instrumental as it really inspires us to ask questions, but it is also instrumental because it ignites change. Seeing diversity in race and ethnicity in contemporary art is the only way that we'll see changes in the art industry, but also for the relation between Africa and the Western canon. How we will participate in all this is really up to us. There's a lot of progress to be made, and honestly, we still need to support stronger voices as they are the ones shaking things up and bringing new perspective. I want to share those beautiful old paintings by younger emerging artist, Kudzanai Violet Hawami. For me, when I see her work, it really represents freedom. Hawami has a fantastic takes on, what it means to be an African and an African life. She has lived in 3 different countries, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Britain, and therefore has been influenced by a multitude layers of communities and cultures, from LGBT to Eco, to Xhosa, to Emo, to British cultures. And as she says herself, the beauty of being a child of the diaspora is really being able to reinvent ourselves and what it means to be African. I want to leave you with this powerful piece by South African artist Laurence Mohauna. Laurence Mohauna also criticized, the influence of the media on our moral consciousness, and he's doing that by using, those fabrics like banners in political demonstration, where he's asking us to reclaim our voices. I believe in the transformative power of art, as it is our only way to paint an image, a nuanced image of Africa, but also its diaspora, one that will be painted by its artists and its cultural producers with their radical, but also very unique view of seeing the world and their place in it. It is really through art that we can regain our sense of agency and empowerment. It is through art that we can really tell our own story. So like Laurence Lemaona says, the power is ours. Thank you.
Okay.
I keep
Any thoughts about that? Anyone?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Okay.
I thought it was very creative. I enjoyed the artwork. And as I said, I enjoyed diversity. And they're ridiculing the Western world. I like the woman on the motorcycle with the unusual clothing. I thought it was great. Very, very creative.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep going here. And we're going to do, let's see, contemporary African. Yeah. That one right there. Oh, wait a minute. Nope. That's the wrong one. We're not ready to go there yet. Okay. Or wait a minute, are we? Dynamic award-winning art. Okay. Yeah, we'll try this one. I guess it doesn't really matter so much which order we see them in, just that we see them. Okay, so this is talking about a particular artist and his work. And if this is the right one, it's a bit of an interview from him. Now, yeah, he's from Uganda, and he's doing some interesting work. So away we go.
I'm Benoni Rukaya. I'm a visual artist. I work at August House, from August House, and my studio is in Newtown with the Bag Factory. And I've been working as a professional artist for nearly 5 years now. In an attempt to minimize resources and still be able to do what I have to do, to think and improvise. In fact, initially I was cutting papers direct from magazines, colored bits, and used them to build pictures. Now I try to learn to paint every day. So doing a mix color on papers, they work as my palette when I'm painting. So when I'm not painting, I have got all that trash. It becomes another source of material to create art. So basically, my collage and mixed media work is an example of the painting process, whether it worked or it didn't. It's actually a very interesting space. Like you can see, it's so huge. You can work on any size of work without being restricted by the size of what you can create and what you can create in this space. I always said the Bag Factory was the best thing that has ever happened to me. As a space, the community of the people there, artists of all different stages of experience. And part of the reasons my motivation in the August House is again a setup of a community, because since I benefited from that community, I believe I can benefit from the community of other fellow artists, and I share what I have, they share what they have. We are supposed to grow from feeding each other, not only to create art, but how to go out there, how to engage the world, how to make our work meaningful to the world, and not just creating art. I believe my work is based on my personal history. experiences I've gone through and what I see other people going through. That's the core element of my own work. It's what I'm trying to communicate with my work. It's not enough to just communicate with it. If you communicate with your work and talk about issues and the community responds, that's not the end of the story. You have a great message with your work about the ordinary person you want to become a voice for, but they actually don't understand it. First of all, they don't know the gallery, they don't know about art. How do you bridge that? And I think that's the disconnect that exists between the art world and the real world. Because the real art world is a closed circuit of the informed and the creators and the dealers. The real world, which the art world attempts to communicate about, they don't really understand that. So I want to put my resources where my mouth is. If you are an artist, you need two basic things to make your message or your work relevant. You need to create a profile. In the art world, if you are an art form, you are nobody. It's not enough to build a profile. You need the world to know you. So the profile helps you, helps the world to know you. So how do you do that? Magazines like Art Africa, they document you. They give you a profile. So if you want to give those people to understand the art world, give it meaning, then you need magazines, platforms like the magazines to extend that message to them. That art fair, I always say the advantage has got over other arts. Traditional established art fairs is, despite being new, it's exciting. It gives an opportunity to everyone. Think you are good enough? Put in your application, be assessed. If you are really good enough, you get a chance to show your work. Even if you don't make a sale, if you are good enough, you are going to be noticed by collectors because they pass through. You are going to be noticed by other media, talking about the event. Your work features there. Galleries will go through, dealers will go through. It opens up so many opportunities for you. So if you dedicate yourself to create art and want to create a career, you need these platforms to give you the exposure, the profile, the document about these events. People get to know about them. And as an artist, especially here in Africa, where we have less of those opportunities, the best thing that the nearest future, receiving entrepreneurial awards in Frankfurt, which is December, as the face of African youth. It's a big one because it's international. They look at Africans in diaspora and African continent. So to be identified and recognized, it means we're next year, I'm participating in the Sydney Art Fair, African Art Fair in London, the Hong Kong Art Fair. So for the first time, I'll be breaking the barrier, take the step beyond the African continent. I think it's a positive step. And next year as well, I'll be taking over a residency in Europe for 5 months, sponsored by the Southern African Foundation for Contemporary Art. I think they're some of the things that makes you realize this, we're doing something right.
This is a real B&H customer story. Jack and Barbara.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Anybody get a chance to see some of the work that he was doing?
Collage? Is that a collage?
Yes, it would be considered mixed media collage, yes. Did you catch from at the very front end the fact that he started that process and he did that type of art because, you know, he didn't have access to paint. And so he would, cut up magazines, and that would be his color. That's how he would get, his colors and things to make his images. What were by, magazines, newspapers, things like that. Because, he couldn't afford to go out and buy paint. So.
I caught that. I'm not that familiar with collage. Is it normally like an underpainting, then you apply the collage pieces, then do you overpaint as well? I'm not real familiar on the collage process.
Well, collage can be a lot of different things, but.
True. I mean, yeah, in this particular case.
Yeah, in this particular case, what he's doing is he's building representational images of people's faces,
right,
out of scraps of paper. And, you could take any scrap of paper, even like something out of a newspaper. And if you look at like a printed page, even with like no photos or anything in it, it has a color and it has a value, right? And so you would cut a piece of that and then place it wherever you wanted that value. So you could do it monochromatically. You could do it, in combination with color. Is there usually an underpainting, or some kind of what we would call a grisaille? No, most collage artists work fairly directly. It's in many ways, it's like alla prima painting. And so they're layering, they're putting one piece down and then another, and it's how it all sort of meshes together when you step back. In his particular case, they did a couple of close-ups of the surfaces of his canvases. And when you looked at it, it looked totally abstract, right?
Yes, right.
As you pulled out, it kind of fell together into, an image of a face, right? And that's, pretty much a very standard sort of approach to contemporary painting. Whether you put it on with paper, whether you use fabric, pieces of wood, whatever, you can use almost anything. But it's like when you're close to it, you get a sense of the construction of it, the materials used. As you step away from it, it transforms into this other thing, this image of, in this case, a person. Okay. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Anybody else got anything they want to say or ask or?
I'm wondering what he meant by being good enough.
Well, see, that's always the question, isn't it? Because as artists, we're always struggling with, well, what's, how is my art going to be perceived? Are people going? We got something going on in the background. At any rate, so again, that's that comes down to the question of, well, how are people going to receive my work? And am I going to get, am I going to get positive reviews? Am I going to get, kind of spotlighted out there in the world? And it, for as, how do I want to say this? For all the positive aspects of art, and doing art, as an artist, there's always that, I guess, insecurity that you're, people aren't going to get what you're all about, and what you're really trying to say. And, at the same time, it's like, what have I got to do to get noticed, right? Take, for example, people like Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, most of those artists, they ended up, doing kind of outlandish, kind of strange, weird things so that people would, take note of their art. You know, you know, they railed against, you know, conventional society because it brought them attention, you know. And so it's like, yeah, what are you going to do to promote your own work? And, you know, in this young man's case, you know, you've got to put the work out there, I guess. Long and short is, you know, you got to take a risk. You got to put it out there. You got to believe in what you do and what you're trying to say, and whether people get it or not. You know, you got to keep putting it out there, you know, because eventually somebody's going to kind of pick up on what you're trying to do, and maybe it will click with them. And, yeah, that's all you can really hope for. So did that kind of answer your question?
It did. I noticed too that he's not with us any longer, right?
I don't know. I thought he was.
I just Googled him and he left in 2019 or 2015.
Yeah, I was.
At 34, he was 34 when he left the planet.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that about him. Did it give
Yeah,
you
2019
Yeah, did it give you any insight into what happened to him?
of cancer.
Oh, cancer?
Yes, it didn't say which type because some, as we know, are more treatable than others. But 34 is pretty young.
Yes, that's incredibly young. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and he was really just getting started, and
Yeah.
it's kind of sad that he's not still out there making art. You know, that we can see, maybe somewhere else.
Yeah, I found his collages really nice.
Well,
I'm sorry that Alana's not here because he likes to do collage. And it was inspiring as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah, he had some really, you know, wonderful artwork and great images.
Yes.
You know, it kind of, you know, when I look at his work, I kind of compare his work to somebody like Chuck Close, right? Who did like all the little squares, and all you see is like little color circles and squiggles, but then you step back and it's almost like this photoreal face.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same kind of effect, you know, with both of their work. So, all right. Anyway, let's keep going. We got 2 more videos to watch today. And again, these are all very short. They're not, you know, they're not long, but they're interesting. And let's see. Well, let's watch the second one since we, you know, saw his work. You know, let's take a look at the second video I've got on him. But thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I hadn't realized that he had passed. So.
I think this is a story that you should watch. Like a lot of Benon's work, it's always got 2 strands. It's got a strand of hardship and a strand of hope as well, and the eyes looking upwards. It's always forward-looking and positive. I think Benon's work also shows how nothing
is famous.
There's a potential that emerges in his work that is
Sorry about that.
profoundly connected to a sense of itself, the sense of experience, the sense of being in the world that I find very unique.
Roots in our church now. Each one is so individual that you can select the word that really talks to you. Because they all talk to everybody, I believe. But if you go look at those two roots, they are so different. They are so different.
For him personally, it's not about just making an artwork. He wants to challenge himself. He wants to learn how to paint better. He wants to understand how to work.
I guess Charles just gave up on us.
I don't quite know what happened. Yeah, it's the
He wants to
internet.
understand the construction of the form. He wants to also understand all those technical things of making an artwork and also putting an emotion through that. So it's not only just about the process of creating something, but also having that emotional connection to the work and the psychological impact the work has on people.
I often see people go up to his work and they look at it and then they walk away and they come back. It's like they just can't help feeling this connection. And I think that is something he's really developed over the last couple of years, because vulnerability requires subtlety.
You're not sharing this. No.
In developing this subtle approach over the last couple of years. Bennett is amazing. I mean, he works from...
Here. What's going on, John?
You're not sharing the same deal.
I'm not? No.
No.
Okay. Well, let's see what we can do about that. So it just kind of went off. Huh.
And we just listened.
This guy, Lem, hear you, bro.
Okay, evidently.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, 1924.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello.
Listen,
Can anybody see me? Can anybody hear me? Okay, evidently we're having some,
every now and then.
yeah, evidently we're having some serious connection issues here this morning.
Is his name Benson? Is his artist named Benson?
maybe it's the Russians.
No, it's last name is Lataya. Bennett's first
Could
name.
you spell this artist's last name again? Yeah. Don't you think that would take a tremendous amount of time to do all those little pieces of paper there than painting a painting?
It'd be tedious.
Yes. I wonder how much he got for his work.
I'm wondering, does he draw it out or sketch it out, or was it all in his head? And then he put it on the canvas, cut the papers.
Well, that's what Charles was saying. Is for him over, you just go ahead and do it.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, evidently I'm having some serious internet issues here today.
Yeah.
So I went down, I got the hotspot from Fulton County, and it's fully charged. So hopefully that will get us through the remainder of
Now
our.
we can see you.
You can see me? Well, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see you.
Screen.
What about the screen, Armando?
Small.
What, Armando?
Okay, now full screen. No, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
You are in business now.
We're in business. Okay. All right. So let's try that again, and I'll rewind it so that we can. How much of it did you guys get to see?
A little bit, not much.
Not too much.
Yeah. Because the internet was going in and out for whatever reason. I mean, it would just literally like go away for a minute and then come right back. So it didn't really drop the connection totally, but yeah. Anyway, I apologize for that. So let's try this again. See if we can do better. All right. Share. And like I said, I'll rewind this a little bit so that we can hopefully get most of it. That's just, you know, it's only like 10 minutes. So let's try it again.
I think this is a story that you should watch.
Like a lot of Benon's work, it's always got two strands. It's got a strand of hardship and a strand of hope as well, and the eyes looking upwards. It's always forward-looking and positive. I think Benon's work also shows how nothing is wasted and everything is rejuvenated. Essentially, what is trash can be re-embraced into the circle of creativity. His ability to work within limitations is extraordinary, and that's the true mark of an artist.
It's a commentary, but he actually, besides the face can be said, but you enjoy the technique. He's adopted this effervescent kind of technical way of rendering these figures.
There's a thinking that emerges in his work. Self, the sense of experience, the sense of being in the world that I find very meaningful.
Can you increase the audio?
That you can select the work that really talks to you. Although they all talk to everyone, and if you go look at those 3 weeks, they are so different. Look at them, they are so different.
For him personally, it's not about just making an artwork. He wants to challenge himself. He wants to learn how to paint better. He wants to understand how to work with color. He wants to understand the construction of the form. He wants to also understand all those technical things of making an artwork and also putting an emotion through that. So it's not only just about the process of creating something, but also having that emotional connection to the work and the psychological impact the work has on people.
I often see people go up to his work and they look at it and then they walk away and they come back. It's like they just can't help feeling this connection. And I think that's something he's really developed over the last couple of years, because vulnerability requires subtlety, and his work has been developing this subtle approach over the last couple of years. Benon is amazing. I mean, he works from Sunday to Sundays. You know, I think when Benon gets to be a very old artist, when he's 80, he will look over quite a varied and dynamic career with incredibly interesting work.
Hey guys, my name is Daniel, and I created this painting.
Bye, Daniel.
But I didn't start here.
All right. So we got to see all of it that time, right?
Yep.
Yay!
It looks like some of it is dimensional.
Well, it would be in the sense that, you know, he's building up these layers of paper. And so it's not this perfectly smooth surface, you know. In fact, you know, when you're close to the surface itself, it looks kind of messy, you know, and totally abstract. Yeah. But that's kind of, again, you know, that's the beauty of the work is that at one point you get a sense of what it is, how it's constructed, how it's made, and then you step back away and it transforms into, you know, this image.
I thought they might have been larger. I was surprised when they showed the one in the background when she was speaking, and the size of the painting, of the portrait, or the collage.
Mm-hmm.
I would have expected it to be large.
Yeah. Well, I think he worked in large sizes generally, but the you know, I'm not, you know, I don't have a lot of details about his working process, but, you know, my guess is, like most artists, you know, he would experiment and he would do things, you know, maybe on a smaller scale, you know, before he would launch into trying to do something larger. So, you know, the fact that there would be smaller works there as well as larger, I don't think is really surprising. But, you know, when he was working in the studio and the previous video, we saw him talking actually about, you know, that very thing, you know, is that where he had been working before, he didn't really have the space, you know, to work on a large scale. And then once he moved into, you know, that newer artist space, you know, he had, you know, he could expand, you know, the size that he was working on. So, you know, everybody's environment is one of the driving factors for how you create things. You know, if you work at a small desk and all your art supplies are there, and that's the only space you have, and you have to kind of clean it up or close it up, you know, at the end of when you're done working, because you live with other people and they don't want your stuff all over everything. You know, then that kind of drives you to creating, you know, smaller, more intimate, more personal pieces of work. Where if you have, you know, like an old house, you know, and you've got all the rooms in the house that you can work in, you know, then you can do, you know, larger scale pieces. And you can keep your stuff out. You can be messy, you know, you can, you know, drip paint on the floor or whatever, you know, it's not going to bother anybody. So, yeah. I guess that's why, you know, people kind of find me hard to live with, because my stuff ends up everywhere. So it just does. So, anyhow, anybody got anything else to say about that video before we watch the last one?
Jim, I have a question. The eyes looked like they were painted. You're saying there's no paint on his work?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that a lot of it, you know, at first, when he first started working, because of his lack of access to materials, originally the only thing he was using was paper, you know, that came out of, you know, easily access magazines, newspapers, things like that. As his career developed, you know, he began using color and paint and combining, you know, paint with collage as well. And then I heard somebody, I think it was Veronica, asked whether or not, you know, he did a drawing underneath, and I'm pretty sure he did. There was one piece that it looked like it was a triptych of 3 heads. One seemed like it was almost totally drawn and painted, you know, and didn't have a lot of color. It was just sort of the outline and maybe some washes. And then the next piece was sort of like a black and white collage piece. And then the third one, you know, or the third part of it was a collage, but it had a lot of color. Anybody remember that piece?
Yeah, but they're all different. It was not the
it wasn't a repeat of the same head. It was three different heads, but they were treated 3 different ways. So it's the same subject, but it was 3 different approaches.
Right.
You know, and now whether that's some insight into his working process, you know, does he start off, you know, with kind of a black and white, you know, drawing or, you know, outline, and then fill that in, or, you know, I'm not sure, you know. So it'd be interesting to find out, though. Anybody else?
Mm-mm.
Okay. How are we doing time-wise here? Yeah, okay. We got plenty of time. All right. So we're going to watch this last video. And then I'm going to go through this lineup of African artists that I found. And it's got a little bit of a write-up about each of them. And it's also got examples of their work that you can see. A few, not a lot. So let's take a look at that. And hopefully the internet will be nice to us and we won't have any disruptions. Okay. All right. Everybody see a gallery wall? Okay, good. All right, away we go.
We're down in Red Hook, Brooklyn. It works. Gonna take a stroll through the contemporary African art fair. Check it out. This is the Frieze Art Fair weekend here in New York. And they'll be running up to Randall's Island over the weekend. But this is in my neighborhood, so I thought I'd make a quick run through, bring you viewers along for a little cruise. So this is the Burning and Water Gallery. And I was informed that they have spaces in Chelsea and San Francisco. And they've got a lot of drawings by Frederick Burleigh Labre, who I actually first saw this gentleman's work, Documenta, it was 2002 maybe. These are some nice little works by Olegario Boete. Well, this is a little confusing, so I assume this is at 50 Galborn Gallery. This is work by Malala Andrioloko-Dezeni. Oh boy, okay, this is gonna be a challenge. These are ultrachrome pigment prints on handmade paper. Oh, there's Dustin Yellen. He's the guy that runs the operation here. This is the Katinka Tabakaru. So a lot of this work is not labeled. And even the stuff that is labeled, I can't pronounce about 70% of this stuff. So it works by Joanna Chalmali, Mixed Media. So it looks like we've got kind of photographs or maybe even digital prints on linen that Joanna has then gone in and embroidered. By Wona Natasha Uguni. And again, we've got some sewing on paper, collage. I like the color. Haberdy and Reine Gallery, France and Belgium. Okay.
Don't be copying my art out right now. Don't like my art.
Again, I don't see any wall labels. Thus ends civilization as you've known it. This is some large like acrylic or gouache on paper. Rwanda, April 6, 1994. Oh. N is for nightmare. Okay, so this is actually, I guess it's just glued onto the wall. Now it's interesting to think about exactly how they would classify contemporary African art. Is that the greater African diaspora? Is that specifically people that are living in Africa? Or is it people that are kind of carrying on a conceptual or cultural idea of what African art is? I don't know. It's a group of pieces on cardboard by Ibrahim El Salahi. It's an interesting wall sculpture piece by Leonardo Drew. It's like a cast aluminum sculpture by Ibrahim El Salahi. This is Magnum A, France. Amadou Sanogo. Omar Victor Diop. Inkjet on Hanamula paper. Jamaica. It's acrylic on fabric. It's an interesting piece by Natalie Bote of Anya, 2018 ink and Japanese paper. Malik Sabida. It's like a large pen and ink drawing by Houston Maludi. Chinese ink on canvas. Well, this is an impressive machine. We saw a series of photographs inside that, wow, depicted 3 or 4 of these, and also like guys in uniforms manning these trucks. Actually, that's beautiful. I guess this is all done with beadwork. Wow. Oh gosh, we've even got our differential, our springs and shock absorbers are covered with beads. Okay, what's inside? Oh, It's like a regular party van in there. Gosh, I hate to imagine how many hours it would take to do all this beating. I'll read a little bit from the press release. Ralph Simon has reclaimed a Casper armored vehicle for this work, Spork One. Casper is synonymous with the heavy hand of apartheid oppression in the townships and urban areas of South Africa. While designed originally as a military vehicle, it was used extensively against civilian populations in the 1980s. For his installation, Simon has covered the surface of the Casper with elaborate, brightly colored panels of glass beads, arrayed in traditional patterns made by artisans from Zimbabwe and Mpumalanga provinces of South Africa. With Spoka One and the larger Casper project, Simon set out to confront the past and stir dialogue on where we are going. Oh, let's slip into gallery in 1957. This is a nice, kind of a casual living room-like setting.
Like Europe and America, where people look at art as also part of their history.
And of course, I don't see any wall labels.
Whether it's people looking at every public that tells us something about 40s and 50s America. And the society's only just an educated middle class. It's not now looking back going, oh, 100 years ago these things happened. It's a story of art. But like, where the food,
Well, let's say this is probably about a 5-by-6 foot painting in acrylic. And I like the bold colors and the directness. This is Taffeta, UK. Victor Ekput.
No, this is a different artist. So this is
Oh, this is a nice photograph. Georgia Sodi. Sea print. Nai Olagunju.
Olagunjo.
Blown glass, gold leaf, threaded cicada seeds. It's another piece by Victor.
Yeah.
More glass pieces by Nyai Alagunju. Actually, this piece caught my eye. So Con Douglas Camp. Some photos by George Wasadi. Demani, 2009 C print. This is the Afronova guy.
I want to back that up just for a second. And the photos that he was looking at right there, Anybody have an idea what those men are doing?
Climbing the wall.
Diamond mines?
Actually, I think they're mining ochre,
Oh, okay.
which is a pigment, you know. But that's where it comes out of. It comes out of the ground. So it's like one of the oldest pigments used, you know, that and charcoal. So.
Some photos by George Wasati, Damani, 2009 C print. This is the Afra Nova Gallery from South Africa. And they're showing a bunch of tapestries here, text. By Lawrence Leman Anna. These are Kenge textile and cotton embroidery. Well, I've been spending more time down here at the Pioneer Works. I've come down for a couple of science symposiums, and I've seen some wonderful performance and music things down here. It's titled Retro Africa from Nigeria. Got some photos. I like these painted sculptures. Who are the sculptures by? This gentleman.
Yeah, good day, sir.
What's your name, sir?
Alimir Dewale.
Alamir Dewale.
Lagos-based artist. Lagos is Nigeria.
What kind of wood is this? Is this mahogany or?
It's actually locally name is called Eki, which is more
Eki,
like
okay.
The red iron wood.
Ah.
Yeah.
They're very beautiful, and I like the way that you've painted them. Then you've also kind of cut away parts of the face there.
The title is anonymous, and it's talking about how people have been displaced. You know, development in Nigeria. You know, some people actually have been segregated. That's why they are faceless. You know, that's why they are voiceless also. So that's the focus for the piece.
All right. Well, thank you for the explanation. How have you been enjoying Brooklyn?
No, it's amazing. The fair is very interesting.
Yes.
They are very amazing work by different galleries, you know, all over the continent. So it's quite very impressive.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I enjoy the work. Okay. Well, that's great. Icon Gallery. Rashid Karichi. Okay. We're going to keep moving here, and I guess they've got things upstairs as well. Spara Contemporary. Oh. Okay. Uthman Walab, Nigeria. Yoshimilo. These are some interesting pieces. Looks like we've got photographs that have been cut and woven together. This is by Kyle Meyer from the series Interwoven, archival print, hand woven with wax. Okay, we saw a piece by this artist earlier. It's a beautiful photograph. Great color. El Marsa, Tunisia and the United Arab Emirates. Gallery Cecile Fakori. We've got some big paintings here. Soldier Buell Love. Oh. South Africa and the United Kingdom.
So, I don't think they relate to each other.
We'll try the second floor.
It's at the Contemporary Contemporary in Tribeca.
Okay, that's an interesting contrast of drawings. I'm already impressed. Oh, here's the third floor. Looks like they're having some kind of a symposium or conference. This is a special project by Nate Lewis titled Cloaked Tensions. James Kahn, reporting on Contemporary African Art Fair at Pioneer Works in Red Hook. You can like this, leave your suggestions, ideas, critiques, reviews below, share it, and subscribe. What you have to say. Thank you, Kate.
Okay. What'd you guys think of that?
It was very hard to watch with a handheld camera bouncing around and just kind of barely focusing on various pieces of art that I think he liked.
Yeah.
And it's just it was hard to really enjoy it.
Yeah, I have to agree. It was just, I guess, two amateurs. I mean, like any one of us could go in with a camera and walk around and yeah, I didn't do justice to the artwork.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that without that, we wouldn't be seeing it today.
Right.
Because no one else did a professional job and put it out there for us. It was like Rebecca was saying the other day, that if somebody had not copied or appropriated it, we wouldn't have been able to witness it.
Yeah.
So I think I've seen something like this before on the YouTube, and it is kind of messy. He knows that it's messy, but he still thought he should share it with us. And you could see the range of artists there, and things were very difficult. But I do appreciate that and know that perhaps one day you can go to those kind of art shows and see things for yourself. And maybe the next time they will do a better job to show the world. But I don't know if it was possible back when that was in 2018 to just put it on YouTube like that. So, yeah. But thanks for sharing.
Yeah, we've seen several of his videos, and you know, he's generally in the New York City area, and he goes to these different shows and galleries and things, and you know, just does sort of a kind of a walkthrough. And yeah, it is difficult to watch because there's pieces that he'll kind of pan by that you really want to see. But you know, I mean, that's kind of one of the downfalls of the medium, is that, you know, he's going to look at what he wants to look at and he's going to show you things. But the thing I wanted you to get out of that was how diverse,
yes,
and how large that show was. If you go back and, you know, you look at that, the show and what the premise of it was, that was not all artwork from New York. That was artwork from all around the world, from different galleries that came together, you know, in New York, and they were from Europe, South, you know, different parts of Africa, even galleries out of like Asia, that were showing African work, you know, or derivative of African work, what they call the African diaspora. And so, you know, there was a pretty broad selection there of things that you could see, and it kind of gave you an idea, or I hope it kind of gave you an idea of how varied and how wide the range is of, you know, contemporary art, you know, on the continent of Africa, but also on those African artists who have left Africa and are now living in Europe and in the United States and Asia and everywhere else. So that was kind of the purpose of the video.
I enjoyed the variety of and the massive amount of art that was there, even though it went back kind of fast, but I did get a little bit of inspiration from some of it. I enjoyed a lot of it.
Yeah.
And something we were talking about on Monday about art that was confiscated, not confiscated, art that was taken out of other countries. I read an article yesterday from the Smithsonian that say that they were returning a lot of the art that had been looted from Nigeria, from Benin. And they have a program now where they're returning a lot of those things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's called repatriation, and yeah, there's been a lot of legal cases in both U.S. courts as well as international courts that have basically come down on the sides of those countries or places of origin, including Native Americans, and now, you know, it's mandated that a lot of those museums return those things that were, you know, appropriated is the word, that, you know, everybody uses. And I don't think you were here in the beginning, but yeah, we had a long discussion about, you know, should we call it appropriation or should we just call it that they were stolen? And, you know, appropriation is kind of the nice way of saying it. So,
This article said that it was looted. So
yeah, and I mean, you know, reality is, you know, that's really what happened. You know, is that a lot of this art was taken and, you know, nobody paid anything for it. You know, a lot of archaeologists or amateur archaeologists went to these countries and, you know, dug this stuff up and didn't think anything about, you know, taking it out of the country, you know, back to a museum or something in Germany, London, you know, wherever. And that's kind of how a lot of that happened. But, you know, a lot of that stuff happened in the 18th and 19th centuries. You know, it's when that stuff was collected and brought back there. So yeah, there is a push internationally to return a lot of this stuff and to make amends, you know, as best you can for things like that. And, you know, what else are you going to do, right? So, anybody else got anything they want to say about this particular video? Like it, hate it, see something that you liked, or?
I was just I guess stunned about the big tank that they covered. I guess there was actually a tank that they covered. And when I see when I see the visions on television right now of the tanks that we see that are trying to run over and kill people, and it's just the two symbols are so much different. And I knew at one point that tank did the same thing, or that was the purpose of it. But we took that and co-opted and made it something that stood for something good of all colors, all nations, all people, for peace, love, and happiness or something, you know? It just different. But we knew what tanks always did and what they were designed to do. So today we just see different visions on television. So,
right. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to see it.
Yes.
Well, that was actually a Russian armored vehicle that, and you know, Russia is just like the United States. You know, one of the ways that they make money for their country is that they export arms all over the world, and particularly to Africa. You know, a lot of those African nations buy Russian-made, you know, weapons and armor, and yeah, for an artist to take something like that and then transform it into a piece of artwork is, you know, it's a beautiful thing visually, but it's also a very strong political statement.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing you find, particularly, at least I see it more in African art than I do even in European art or American art, where it's a duality, you know, where there's the beauty of the image itself, but there's also a very strong political undercurrent, you know, talking about the history and the current state of people in that area. So it's much more nuanced and complex, you know, than you might first think, you know, when you look at these images. It's kind of like the gentleman who was the sculptor, right? And he did the carved heads, which is a very traditional approach to African art. It's something culturally that's been done there for literally thousands of years. And then, you know, he painted them, and then he cut parts of the face away. And what he was saying about, you know, these are people that nobody sees and they don't hear them. And so he removed, you know, the eyes and the mouth, you know, to basically symbolize the fact that, you know, they don't, you know, they're not seen, you know, they don't have a voice. You know, very, very powerful political statement, you know, and by looking at just the aesthetic of the work itself, you know, you may not pick that up, you know, so it's nice to have the context that is put in. So that's just me personally. Okay. Okay, we're getting close. I want to just real quick, I want to run through this kind of list and some of the work of some of these artists from Africa. And they've got some beautiful stuff. And it would be worthwhile, you know, to go back and actually look at each of these artists individually. And at some time, you know, we'll try to incorporate more and more of them into the conversation. So I'm going to share that with you real quick, and we're going to kind of wrap it up for today. So, you know, I'm not going to make the mistake of trying to pronounce like a lot of these names, okay, because I will butcher them, I'm sure, and you know, my apologies for that. But you know, what I tried to do is collect their names, but also examples of their work, you know, and a little bit of background. And so, like this particular individual, you know, is from Mali and works on fabric. You know, it's large scale fabric pieces. And understanding that, you know, textile, you know, as an art form in Africa is a very, very old art form. And so the incorporation of like contemporary imagery plus, you know, traditional approaches of, you know, making fabric. And we were talking about quilts the other day, right?
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
And
Yes.
if you look at this, you know, that's basically, you know, what this is a quilt.
This is beautiful. This is just gorgeous.
Yeah. And so you have all these figures in different types of fabrics and things that you might find, you know, tie-dyed fabrics and things, you know, that would be traditional, you know, in Africa, and then they're, you know, placed and layered, you know, to create an image. And of course, then you've got the, you know, the different symbols of different countries, and, you know, mainly the colonial countries, you know, who took over parts of Africa. So again, you know, it's a duality of something is beautiful, you know, and interesting and well made, and then it's juxtaposed against, you know, this political sort of underlying statement. Same artist, and in this case, you know, he's not using collage, he's using painting, and, you know, again, sort of symbolic, traditional, what you would kind of consider, you know, traditional African images or figures, you know, simplifications and abstractions, and yet at the same time, it's very contemporary. So, there's what is it? Ada. Maloney, anyway, Ethiopian artist. And these are extremely complicated, installations. And so it's a lot of found objects. I'll try to blow them up so you get a sense. So these are actually 3-dimensional, and they're fairly large. They're kind of like the size of a, like a dining room table. But really interesting, constructions. And again, they have that sort of, a lot of the texture and the feel of Africa. And at the same time, they're very contemporary. And they're from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But could you imagine how
cardboard, could you go back a little? It said it's made out of cardboard, and what else?
Paper, probably wood, a whole variety of different materials. It's almost like an architect building a maquette, of a building. Same kind of construction process. But, this is much more highly decorated and colored. So, yeah, I refer to as extreme maquettes. I know you guys at Benson have never heard that word before, right? If you've ever taken my sculpture class, you know that, what that is. This is another artist. What is it? Sherry something. Anyway. But, this is a more...
It's almost fun until you realize the person's cut up.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, it's Magritte. Are you familiar with his work?
No.
European artist, kind of the same approach. He would, and MC Escher sort of did the same thing, where it's like they removed parts of the figure, and kind of created, it was like it was a ribbon or a shell that they've cut away from. So you see through it. So in a way, this is almost a very traditional European approach, right? Painted in a traditional sort of European way. And yet the subject matter is, about Africa, and African people. And
what's the meaning here? The fish on the plate. What do you think the meaning of this painting?
Well, that's, that's a good question. I can't tell you exactly what this artist meant by that. But, if you look at it, you can, read lots of different things in it. Look at the paintbrush and sort of the rainbow. And then the drops of the various colors. So you might equate that to, possibly like LGBTQ community. It might be something that's, more traditionally African. The fish, things like that. Again, I think you can read a lot of different interpretations into this particular piece of work, depending on your experience and where you're coming from, your culture. So, you might see the fish on the plate as, an influence of maybe like Christian religion,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
If you come from an Arab background, again, you might see it as something totally different. So, and that's yeah.
One thing I can say that the mixed media people have vivid imaginations. They just really are very creative.
Mm-hmm.
And I can appreciate that because that's not me, but it's really interesting and beautiful to see.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's like all of these artists, you know, I mean, none of them are necessarily trying to take the approach of photographic representation.
That's true.
You know, they are taking their experiences, creating images, you know, and sort of reflecting the culture that they come from, you know, and we talk a lot about that. You know, and I say often that not one of us can sit down and do a painting and not put ourselves into it, you know, our experience, our, you know, all the influences, you know, that we've grown up with in our life. You know, they all show up out there on the canvas. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to hide who you are or what you're about, you know, in your artwork. You know, you can't. You know, it's going to show up out there. So here's another artist, and again, you know, really interesting imagery. Here's a sculpture piece. You know, and wood, you know, would be a very traditional medium, you know, for an African artist to work in. And this artist has taken, you know, a very contemporary approach. And so what they've done is they've taken, you know, flat pieces of wood and then cut and shaped them, you know, to create a sculptural form out of. El Entuzzi. Now, I've heard of him before, and I've seen some of his work. He was a fairly big name in the art world. I think, you know, in the early 2000s, you know, late 20th century, in the 90s, I think a lot of his work got out into the world and got some notification, you know, some, I guess, acknowledgement, you know, for what he was doing. But he was doing a lot of work internationally, a lot of public artwork in particular. So. Now, when I first saw this, I can't say that I was like really impressed, you know. But then, you know, you begin to start looking at the images itself and, you know, what he's doing, you know, kind of playing with, you know, this imagery of the pounding stick, you know, which is, you know, basically it's the way that they turn, you know, like roots and grain and stuff, you know, into, you know, something that they can actually use, you know, for eating. And he's done, you know, these whole series, you know, on that. Here's some more of his work. And it's simple in some ways and really complicated in others. And I think, you know, I think these are put on wood, like wood panels. So.
It needs to be a puzzle for kids.
Could be, yeah. A little dark, a little violent sometimes. You know, I don't know that I would want to, you know, have my grandchildren, you know, putting puzzles like that together. So, you know, sculpture piece. I think this is all metal. Let's see. And this is an Egyptian artist. Sculpture, yeah. Painting, sculpture, ceramic. Image finish. Huh. Okay, hang in here with me just for a minute before I put you to sleep. You can go take a nap in a little bit.
Sorry.
It's okay. Again, you know, a more sort of traditional European approach, you know, of painting on a rectangular canvas, you know, creating images. and then sculpture, and then I think the one piece over to the right is a fabric piece. So again, it's kind of this blend of sort of European and then traditional African, approaches, and kind of blending them together. But, quite a diversity of work. Now, there's nothing political about this piece of work, right?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, but you realize what it is, right?
Yes, it's garden tools.
Well, actually, it's large caliber shells out of machine guns and things that.
Oh, okay.
But there's shovels in it, though. There's shovels.
Yeah, this would be a shovel, 2 handles of a shovel, but these are all shell casings.
Yeah.
And these would be, like rockets from a rocket launcher. All used in the wars in, I think, like Zimbabwe or somewhere like that. So these are actually shells that were used to kill people. And he's taken it and he's made a chair out of it.
Is the shovel the toil from the people? Is that the symbolism of the shovel?
Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what the shovels are about.
Digging graves, maybe?
Digging graves,
Yeah.
Or the toil of the people.
Yeah, could be. But again, each of us can look at this and read into it all kinds of different things. It becomes, we kind of create our own narrative, about it.
Look like all retired products.
Yeah,
they're not to be used anymore.
Right. Yeah. Well, they were used,
but they were used.
Yeah, they were used to kill people.
Yeah, they're retired now.
And now he's, this artist has collected them and, made a piece of artwork.
Do you think that kind of aids to the healing process of what they did and what they stood for, those particular items? So it kind of, people would know and remember the war, that they were war things, and kind of make you feel a little bit better, or even though you remember, it adds to the healing process of the tragedies that went before.
I think it's disturbing.
Well, it is disturbing in a way, but at the same time, I think that Claudia's got a valid point. You've taken, something that was used, for a horrible, thing of killing people, and you've transformed it into this thing of, beauty and, possible, political dialogue about the things that happen. So, it's a way of bringing that to the forefront and keeping it in the conversation, so that it can be dealt with. And people can kind of process, what went on.
It reminds me of all the devastation those things caused. It would not be something that I would enjoy looking at.
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily meant to. This is not something that, probably anybody wants sitting in their living room.
No, but a museum, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, certainly in a museum or, in an international art show, to send a piece like this to, say, Germany, Belgium, Italy, places like that, or even Russia, where probably, or the United States, where a lot of these arms actually came from, where they were manufactured. It gives people a chance to look at that and kind of question really what's going on.
It goes back to the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, an image can speak volumes.
Yes, it does.
And I mean, you could sit and have conversations, for weeks at a time and it not be as clear and as immediate as like this chair sitting there. Yeah.
You know what would be amazing if a professor took something like that and set it in the classroom and told the college students, we're going to talk about this today.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know what you think about it and what you think about the world as it relates to this, and see what the young folks would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and yeah, I mean, it could be almost any setting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, if if you want to have a conversation about this, I mean, you could look at it, and there's so many different approaches that we could take to it. As a citizen of the United States, and knowing our history, and knowing that a good deal of our GDP, and our economy runs off of the arms industry. And I'm sure that some of those shell casings and things, probably have, made in the USA stamped on them.
That's true.
So it's like, and you can extract that out to, this is where some of my tax dollars ended up at.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so again, it opens up those doors, to have all kinds of conversations. And again, that's kind of the power of art.
That just brought to mind, I remember seeing a movie when I was in college for Vietnam. Mm-hmm. And I could see the Shell Corporation's tanks they had for the reserve oil mm-hmm. in that part of the country. Yeah. And then just to know, just the other day, the Shell decided they're not going to sell any oil to Russia. So, yeah, it is. It's just, okay, I tied the two together, back in the day and still today. Okay.
But some of these weapons are used to defend yourself.
We understand
that it's, they're attacking people and you have to defend yourself. So
I understand it. I understand, hon. I understand.
Yeah, there's two sides to that story.
There's two sides to this. Evil people are trying to take away from the innocent people. The innocent people need these weapons to defend themselves. Always, always.
Well, that's, it's, I mean, I don't really want to get into the political aspects of this.
No, it's not. That's how the world is. That's how it's always been.
Yeah, but, with what's going on right now between Russia and Ukraine, there's two sides to that story.
Yeah, but they were always after Ukraine.
I'm not going down that rabbit hole.
No, but I'm just saying, and whether you're talking about the colonization of Africa or you're talking about a conflict.
Well, we took Mexico, right? We took land from Mexico.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah,
we did the same thing.
Texas and California.
Right.
Yeah.
But there were no cameras to video it to the world.
No, there was not.
You guys are going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
All right, let's not talk about that.
I'm trying to be quiet.
Yeah.
Going down a rabbit hole.
Oh yeah. There's lots of rabbit holes to go down.
Yeah, I know.
But that's that's one of the things. It's like, how do you divorce art from a conversation about the world around you and what you're experiencing? And so oftentimes, artists do talk about uncomfortable things,
Mm-hmm.
Things that politically and culturally are very, very difficult, for people to grapple with.
Like the tank, the beaded tank. I thought that was magnificent.
Yeah.
That was unreal.
I wondered how long it took them to do that.
Yeah.
What size team they had.
But my favorite is Lutaya. The Lutaya, the one with all the little pieces of paper, and he makes that beautiful portrait. That was my favorite of today.
Yeah. Well, now, in answer to your question, Eloise, one of the things that they said about that was, yes, it was all beadwork, but it was beadwork from actual different regions and different tribes who were all affected. And so it wasn't one artist, putting it, I mean, they went and had people, do, or create traditional beadwork that would represent their particular tribe so that they could all be represented on that piece. Again, it becomes sort of a public piece of work at that point. One day we're going to have a deep and meaningful conversation about public art and about why we should even have public art, in the first place.
Public art?
Public art, yes.
Do these beads, were the beads from Africa brought to America and the Native American used them? Is that where the beads?
Yeah, a lot of them were. A lot of them were imported. Yeah. But glass beads were made, from, Asia, Africa, Europe, and a lot of those were imported into the US, and Native Americans adopted them and started using them. Previously, what they were using is they were using pieces of shell, from mussels and things collected out of rivers and, even seashells.
And they painted, did they paint them?
No, they used the natural color, but they would make a bead out of them, take them and break them up into smaller bits and then shape them and carve them and pierce them, drill through them to make an actual bead.
Well, how are those beads, the beads that were on that tank, the
Mhm.
glass bead, how did they make those little beads?
Well, a lot of those are, made or manufactured, on a mass scale. I mean, there's a whole industry of making, so it's not the way that people maybe, 400 or 500 years ago made beads, where they would find a natural material, like wood, stone, shells, something like that, and then cut and shape and, carve each bead. So it's,
Remember the artists that had all of the people that were in Asia making these porcelain pieces?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, they did it. It was a couple of year project. Just make those little.
Oh, yeah.
pieces.
The Chinese
Porcelain.
art. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, he, and that's a good project to talk about. So he had this idea, and they were making sunflower seeds.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so he took a village that had at one point in time had a thriving, porcelain industry who had the whole function of that village was to make porcelain, for the Chinese emperors, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after the Communist Party took over, they no longer, had a patron, for their work. And so the village began to fall apart and fall into disrepair, and, people had no employment, and things kind of began to fall apart. Well, later on, you have this artist who recognizes that he could create a public project, a public arts project, where he could give these people, at least, for a period of time, a way of using their skills and their experiences to create, help him create, this bigger piece of work. And it would be funded, by that government, again, making people aware, of the effect of as these things change, you know, and industries begin to fade or die, and the fact that, you know, we're all dependent, you know, we're all dependent on, you know, the world around us. And, you know, we make things, and, you know, people have jobs and things. And when those go away, you know, there's kind of a devastating effect of that. So. Anyhow, yeah, I'm just going to kind of run through these real quick. But again, you know, and one of the things I want to bring up to people, and, you know, as you look at this, you know, keep in mind, you know, this is all African art. And yet it could really be, you know, from anywhere. You know, you see things, you know, much like this painting in Italy, Spain, all over Europe, Americas, as well as Africa. So anyhow, well, we have gone way over time. It's 12:20. I know Armando is probably left and well on his way to Benson at this time to get his lunch. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. And we'll carry this conversation on. You know, like I said, we have lots of artists to look at. And, you know, there's some interesting stuff out there happening in the world. Okay? So, anybody got anything to say before we go away? All right.
I'm going to see, on Friday, I'm going to the High Museum to see the pictures, the portraits of President Obama and Michelle Obama.
Yeah, they have those on display now.
Yeah, until March 20th.
Yeah.
They go away.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they've got a couple of interesting shows coming up there that should be pretty good. So
I'm taking 5 other people with me.
Are you? Good. Good. All right. All right. Well, you guys have a good rest of the day. Try not to get rained on, you know, and try to stay warm.
Okay.
And, you know, we will see you tomorrow. I will be at the Benson Center. So if you have things you've been working on, things you want to talk about, things you want to share, please send them in, okay? And we'll take a look at them tomorrow afternoon, okay? So till 2 o'clock tomorrow.
All right. Goodbye. Thank you, Charles.
Right, you're welcome.
Bye, Naomi. Bye, Eloise.
Yeah. And everybody else.